Hello, this is Karl-James Langford, and this is another video in the Sacred Spaces or Places series. And I'm getting through these videos thick and fast. They're looking at areas that I've been teaching in my classes. When you think about sacred places or spaces, they can come in many forms. And this is a structural form. We start off with an image of the site at Olympia, the great temple site of the great god Zeus. But the site I'd like to look at first is the temple of Hephaestus. Now, the temple of Hephaestus, which is not very much known. It's actually in Athens itself, stone's throw, and can be seen from the site of the Acropolis, the Parthenon of Athens. Temple of Hephaestus is one of those sites that, when it comes to thinking about sanctuary and thinking about sacredness, it's one of those sites that's very much missing in the itinerary. As we look at one or two of the images here, we start to look at a site that's relatively intact as opposed to the Parthenon. And it's very much a treat to actually see this. If any of you have actually visited Athens, you would obviously go to the site of the Parthenon, but you would basically miss the site of the Temple of Hephaestus. Now, Hephaestus is one of those sites that brings to us a moment in time of great perfection. This temple itself is relatively intact. It was used as a Christian site up until recent times. And it was one of those sites that welcomed the new king of Greece, beginning of the 1800s, when Greece itself became its own independent state, away from the old days of the Ottoman Empire. I think these videos that we were looking at with sacred sites were not so much about detail, but to understanding and why they've very much survived. Some of them on the backwater of the archaeology, the backwater of the history. But let's give you a few dates. The few dates and a few details. Some believe it started its construction in the year 449 BCE, round up to 450 BCE, and was completed around 415 BCE. Some people assume it's in tribute to the great Athenian hero Theseus. Great Athenian hero Theseus, obviously the great Minotaur and King Minos springs to mind. The site itself is in the middle of a landscape of rejuvenation of the Greek state, and it's very much associated with the metal working and pottery working of the landscape at that time. We're coming back to this wonderful site more in the sense of sacredness and so on. It's a relatively well preserved site, and the point I really made when I was teaching the area of sacred sites was that sacred sites to lots of our ancestors didn't really need to be made out of stone, but to the Greeks this is relatively completely an edifice of stone. To the sanctity of the Greek people. It very much became into the sanctity of the Greek Orthodox Church by about the AD 600s. Its life as a sort of pagan temple was a site that was away from Christianity was probably for about 800 years, and the Romans really respected it when they took over the Greek state. But this is relatively intact. It's one of the best temples in the Greek world, but it's very much dwarfed then by the Parthenon itself. The Parthenon itself, as the first image opens with German Heinkels flying over the Acropolis when the Germans were in control of Greece after the invasion of Greece in the Second World War. One thing that I feel that you see when you look at the temple of at the Acropolis, the Parthenon, is that it's very much been denuded by lots of the marbles being taken away, obviously the Elgin marbles, and the sense of what it was about and its feeling has very much been drained away. The site itself is very much seen in scaffolding, light lit at night, which actually I don't think it does anything for it, but it really dominates Greek culture today, so it's very much still important. But I think the sadness is in that the Elgin marbles are not at the site, and it's not intact. The roof itself was lost probably around 300 years ago when the Turks were using the site as a powder magazine, and the powder magazine blew up, and the roof was lost. Tendley now moving on to the site of the oracles, Delphi. Delphi, to anyone expecting to see remains like the Parthenon or the remains like Hephaestus, won't really see them at the Parthenon. Won't really see them at the site of Delphi, the site of the great oracle. There's a bit of a shame, really, that the archaeologists, when they excavated it, left the site in a bit of an arrangement of stones, and again, that takes away the aesthetic nature. Takes away, what the site is about. The site at Delphi itself was a very large votive site at one stage, and it's a site itself that is directly linked with godship and goddessship, in the sense that you've got gases potently coming out from the ground. I mean, we've proven that now. And it's like when people went to the site, the oracle would read to them, and the gases then would intoxicate people, and then the reading would be given. So it's got a bit of mysticism. So it's got a bit something extra than the Parthenon or the Temple of Hephaestus. But it's a bit isolated, this site, and then again it was taken over by the Romans and remained to be a site in history. And the reason why I've mentioned that, when we look at the past and we look at sites that haven't got stone, they've almost got more mystery about them because the unknowing. When archaeologists muck around with the site like they've done with the Delphi site, it takes something away from really what you're seeing, a sort of reconstruction of what the landscape would have looked like at Delphi. And where we're going to go next is the site of the great temple of Zeus at Olympia. The site has been extensively excavated by German archaeologists from the latter part of the 1800s all the way through. Now, one thing it's said is that the Germans felt that like they were coming home in the 1940s when they saw this great site. The great archaeologist to me, John Romer, brought me into that thing that the Germans felt that that their real past was actually in Greece, that pure Aryanness, actually that sense of purity. The Germans wish to see that at Olympia, the great temple of Zeus. But that's the German state, the politicians. One interesting thing that the archaeologists, when they were excavating, and Dolfeld was also one of the archaeologists excavating at Olympia, who was also the archaeologist who was excavating alongside Schliemann at Troy. The string of archaeologists that were excavating at Olympia weren't tainted by politics. They were more tainted by this sense of fair play, the sacredness, and in fact Olympia itself and the idea of the Olympic Games and that ethic took over the archaeologists to find out the true facts rather than the fiction that politics and politicians paint of the past. But where's the sacredness in all of these sites? I think it's very much harder to find sacredness in a site that's made of stone, because in a way the sacredness in sites with stone takes away the imagination. The archaeologists let you see these remains and then paint a picture. When you've got an open field and there's a wood henge site and all that timber's rotted away and all you've got is the field, the archaeologist lets you imagine, because the archaeologists are basically in the same imagination as you. You're as right as they are. But the archaeologist can always be right when there's the stone remains of a site like Olympia. And the great enshrinement of the past is to be seen not only in stone remains, but then the imagination of the leap of faith in remains that have long since denuded and rotted away. This is Karl-James Langford. Hopefully you've liked this video.